All right, Rep. Villio on HB 321.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Members, good morning. House Bill 321 creates the Truth and Transparency in the Louisiana Criminal Justice System pilot program. Louisiana has the distinction of having 3 cities in the top 10 that have the highest crime rate in the country. This bill makes criminal court records from the parishes of these 3 cities, Orleans, Caddo, and Baton Rouge, easily accessible to the public through a pilot program to analyze what is and isn't working in order to make evidence-based decisions about policy, programming, and funding. It also unveils the secrecy on violent juvenile offenders statewide by making those records public. The age-old belief, which I believe is outdated, was to shield juveniles from the potential social and/or professional stigma that might come from releasing the name of a young criminal. So the names of juveniles who have committed heinous crimes has been kept under the cloak of confidentiality to protect the name of the young offender without any regard for protecting the community from the wrath of violent crimes. From my perspective, this bill doesn't target race. It doesn't target district attorneys. It doesn't target judges. This bill is about public safety. The public has a right to know. We have some victims, many victims, who are here to testify in support of this bill today, as well as the Attorney General. Fellow legislators, the primary goal of the juvenile justice system is to rehabilitate a juvenile. This legislation doesn't interfere with that primary purpose, but we should no longer be blind to the fact that juvenile courtrooms today look more like criminal courts and a lot less like the once early reform vision we had for young criminals. For that reason, many states, including Missouri, Illinois, New Jersey, Idaho, Kansas, and Colorado, have passed laws to expose the identities of their more serious juvenile offenders, introducing accountability into the juvenile justice system. With that, Mr. Vice Chair, I'm happy to take questions, but before we do that, I have 3 amendments that I would like to take up to put the bill in proper posture, if that's okay.
Thank you. Representative Villio offers up this amendment set. Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, the amendment set is adopted.
My name is Sherilyn Price. I'm the mother of Brandon Montrell, known as the comedian Boogie B. He was killed December 23rd in Rouse's parking lot of the Warehouse District in New Orleans. He was sitting in his car, and a gun battle broke out, and he was shot and killed instantly. I didn't find this out until maybe 2.5 hours later. I was notified by a reporter from the Times-Picayune. And after that, I went to go find information. And long story short, I didn't speak to any member of the NOPD until about 11 o'clock that night. The coroner's office called me about 9:30. So there's no priority when you're a victim. Understand that.
You mentioned that, but for this program, there's no other programs that you understand is available in your community?
No, quite frankly, no, I'm not aware of any program. There are advocates, and you get this pamphlet of victims' rights, but those rights have no teeth. There's no place to go when nobody obeys those rights and respects those rights. I'm not sure what's going to happen next. I am getting emails from the DA's office now.
And once again, do you feel like that's because things have gone public, because you've been on?
Oh, it's definitely because things have gone public. You know, I'm in a position where the DA's office has made false statements about me in public. saying that they contacted me when I can prove that they didn't, saying that nobody made statements to me that I can prove that they did. So my relationship with the DA's office is a contentious one. And there's an advocate, an individual.
That's
who's
what I was
just a
gonna
private
ask you.
individual who stepped forward to help me.
Okay.
And she's been getting information. She helps a lot of people. And I'm told that the DA's office is currently trying to silence her.
Okay, but she's not a paid employee of
She's not a
any
paid employee of
agency,
anything. She doesn't have a non.
just a person that stepped up.
Have an organization. She doesn't have a.
Right.
She's just a person who was a victim of a crime a few years ago, and she decided to do something about
30
it.
seconds.
Her name is Patty LePere, and she's an amazing woman.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I was a victim on December 22nd of 2021 at about 6:45 in the morning. I had just gotten into my vehicle to go to work, put the key in the ignition, and somebody came through the passenger side door and shoved a gun in my face. Was able to look at the individual, knew it was about a 15, 16-year-old male. He took my bag, which had my wallet and a number of other things in it. It was just like a knapsack sort of thing. Got out, called the police. Police came within about 5 or 10 minutes, gave them a statement. The individuals involved were 12, 13, 14, 15, and 19. Where were the parents? After they apprehended the individuals, I was called about 2 months later by the DA's office. DA's office asked me, do you want to press charges? I said, what do you mean, do I want to press charges? Of course I want to press charges. Do you want to be a witness? Of course I'll be a witness. So that was roughly February. The day before a hearing that took place, I believe, the end of May, I had never received a subpoena, got a call from the DA's office, you need to be at Juvenile Justice Center at 9 o'clock in the morning. Of the 14 victims involved with this ring, there were two other individuals that were there. I was the third. They all had a similar experience where they had not been subpoenaed. They found out about it the day before. Got a call about a month later informing me that there was administrative hearing that was going to come out for the individual that I was involved with. Didn't need to be there, just purely procedural. I have that recording on my phone. They sent the individual to trial. The trial judge got there, said that there were no witnesses. They dismissed the case. Have received no information from the DA's office. There is no victim's advocate.
And from your perspective as a law enforcement officer, I'm curious to know, how do you feel about making available to everyone, not just the victims, but to everyone,
It would help.
the record of a kid who is accused, but not even convicted, but who is accused of a crime? And as I read this bill, it concerns me that we're talking about making available to everyone, not just the victim, but to everyone, the record of a kid who's accused of a crime, not convicted, but accused. As a law enforcement officer, I'm curious to know how you really feel about that.
My true opinion and how I feel, if I walk out here at night and shoot someone or do anything, before I go to court, my record's being able to be seen, right? So if you're a kid, I feel the same. I mean, you just have to suffer the consequences of what accountability. Nobody's being held accountable these days for what they do. It's just slap on the wrist. And I see it every day. I promise you I've arrested numerous of people from juveniles on up, and all they get is, don't do it again. And it makes me as a LEO feel like, what am I doing this for? It's just a waste of time. I'm putting my life on the line. I just got out this morning. I did my shift last night. I told my chief I had to leave because I really wanted to be here because of the importance, and they all support me in what I'm doing, and they say the same thing. We are not holding our juveniles accountable for nothing that they're doing. So if that means showing, what you did, so be.
Representative Villio, if you could, you mentioned about this pilot, and that is in 3 parishes.
Yes.
And you spoke to earlier and acknowledged the optics of the 3 being predominantly African-American parishes. What was the thought process behind that? And I want to ask, once you answered, are you willing to expand it to other parishes that are predominantly
Happy to
white,
answer that.
please?
The thought process was quite simply, as I said in my introduction, last year, I read an article that, quite frankly, I was unaware and shocked that 3 cities in Louisiana were in the top 10 in the country for having the highest crime rate and the highest violent crime rate, and that being Orleans, Shreveport, and Baton Rouge. And I was certainly living in the neighboring parish of Jefferson Parish, and having been a prosecutor in Orleans, I was aware of Orleans. I was not aware of Shreveport and East Baton Rouge. And so that was the reason. And when I read the editorial, quite frankly, I've never looked at the demographics. I certainly was aware of the demographics in Orleans Parish, not in Shreveport and not in Baton Rouge, but I can understand it. But more so, I also believe that, it's one thing in the adult piece, those records are already available. They're not yet necessarily user-friendly, and they're also at a cost to the public and victims. But those records are already available. It's not true for juveniles. Those records aren't already available. And I said to myself and offered the amendment early on, if you look at the First Amendment, place, which is the second set, relative to 412, why shouldn't it be open statewide? Why should one juvenile in one parish be his identity revealed, but somehow my same arguments of public safety shouldn't apply to a juvenile offender in another parish? And that's why I offered that amendment. Relative to moving off of a pilot program and expanding it to all parishes, I think what you're going to learn, Representative Knox, is I would very much like for that to happen. What you will learn is the many, many, many parishes in our state that do not currently have any electronic records.
The public has a right to know what bonds the judges are setting. The public has a right to know what charges the DAs are accepting and which ones they're refusing and which ones they're dismissing. And finally, the public has a right to know whether the sentences that are imposed by the judges reflect the actual harm that's done.
The more and more I hear this testimony from this table, it sounds like we have a problem within the district attorney's office and not necessarily the clerk's office.
Yeah, well, can I take those in reverse?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, we don't have a problem in the clerk's office to an extent other than the system is very onerous for the average citizen to be able to access. They've got to physically go there. They got to physically know how to be able to dig through the files. They have to be on guard and constantly going in and out of the courthouse just to find out when their case is coming up or not.
And what is this legislation going to do to streamline that?
Well, this legislation would grant the public access to be able to follow these crimes. Because remember, sure, there's victims that have a right to know, but the public does as well. This is the public's criminal justice system as well.
Okay, so this is just not about the victims having access to these records. It's
correct.
About
this is about
everybody.
accountability, having access to data, Representative Marcel. When we talk about the records, I want to make sure that we don't confuse those terms. Okay, I think that Representative Villio has done the painstaking job of ensuring that the pertinent information that the public should be able to know, all right, without divulging or creating or violating confidentiality or certainly sensitive records in the case of juveniles.
We've stated that the purpose of this bill is accountability.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm going to ask you to do a favor for us all, to tell us who's not being accountable to these victims. Clearly, we've said it's the system, but saying the system is wide. Name names.
Well, that's a great question, Representative LaFleur. The reason that we're asking for this legislation is so that we can actually compile data, that we can see the statistics, that we can determine whether or not it's the judge or the DA or law enforcement. The problem we have today is I can't name you those names. That's the reason these victims are here. They are literally walking around in the criminal justice system in the dark without a flashlight. And so we're just asking to try to turn the light on.
My name is Bruce Riley. I'm VOTE, and I'm the deputy director. And we really believe in transparency in the system. We spend a lot of time and energy trying to figure out who's doing what and when. We spend, and including our friends and family, spend a lot of money trying to get a hold of access to docket master. As has kind of been illustrated, Orleans Parish has had an antiquated system for quite some time. And I admire the ambitiousness of this bill to go after the 3 largest parishes. Usually a pilot is kind of a smaller thing than going for the big kahuna, but hey, go for it. And we'd love to see statewide the public having access to what's going on in the courts, what the judges are up to. We do our best to kind of unveil for people what judges do and don't do, and we try that with all elected officials. So we'd love to see this kind of replicated. In terms of the specifics on the bills, as was pointed out about arrests and pretrial, I'm not a clerk of court, so I can't tell you exactly when a record kind of makes it into their system and when it would become available. But clearly, when things are still in the police hands, that's not going to help people who are dealing with victim situations. And I'll just say, just if I haven't said it before, I've been a victim every single decade of my life, and I'm going into my 5th decade. So I don't think anybody here is like victim free. So we all have a concern about safety in the community. I too have a teenager at home. So, these are things that impact us all. And although you usually see us standing up for the rights of people who've been accused or convicted, we care about public safety as well. This bill seems to be very limited on what it will or won't do. So, I probably think we shouldn't be confusing ourselves about how much public safety it will bring. I think it is a good government process. There's been millions. There's like $20 million that goes to the victims from the feds right now, victims funding here in Louisiana. The Justice Reinvestment Initiative, a big portion of it was going to victims funding. This is not a new issue. We've been working on this, and this body's been working on this for decades. And so now to have the Attorney General himself say that it's not working, that portion, which he's in charge of, I think that's a great moment for us in terms of a reveal of what needs to be improved. But people who've been in charge of this system for decades are basically now saying that it's been could be done a little bit better, I guess. And the stories that we heard from people, who've suffered from crimes is it's terrible the way they're not being spoken to and taken care of. But I do think there's millions and millions of dollars that's going into this right now, and should probably take a look at those monies. And I'm really happy if they say this is very easy to do in terms of budget-wise, because it seems like every time we ask for something to do that has budget-wise, if it's like a 50-cent budget, it's too much. So I think this is a great moment for all of us that can take on an ambitious project and pull it off. Thank you. Oh, and I should say too that is there going to be an automatic expungement process for people who are arrested, who are in the system, who then
Well, now we're going outside the bill.
Well, hey, I think we're going to be back here talking about people's names getting out of the system who are not convicted of a crime.
That is another day, another time, and
All right.
the board is clear.
You.
Thank you.
My name is Darlene Jones. I'm here as a victim. I've been a victim of violent crime many times by juveniles. I was shot in a carjacking attempt in 1994 5 times by juveniles. I have 2 bullets left that are still in my body. The operative word here is they are juveniles. I don't think anybody here who is an adult would do the same things they did at this age or at 20 that you do at 14, 15 years old. You might, in some neighborhoods, the worst thing that you can do, depending on your environment, is steal your parents' car. But then your parents have to have a car to steal. So some kids just go out and do things that are crazy, steal somebody else's car because they don't have a car in their neighborhood to steal. I'm not saying that it's right. It's not a right thing at all. But to have these juveniles' names be made public in any kind of way, I think is a detriment to the juveniles, and it doesn't help their situation or with their rehabilitation. It's like a punishment just for being arrested. You could be accused for things that you're not even guilty of, whereas the juveniles that assaulted me were guilty. I still don't think that their names should have been made public because they were juveniles. I would hope that if you were juvenile, if you're taking out of the environment and out of the situation that's causing you to be influenced by bad people, influenced by adults, influenced by drugs, whatever it is, and put into a place where you're getting education, like someone mentioned, or you're getting the attention that you need, that you have a chance to live a full and productive life without having something that you did as a juvenile follow you for the rest of your life. As far as the information in the database is concerned, as a compromise to what's being proposed, I don't even think initials should be used. If the juvenile's name is John Henry Mulligan, instead of his initials, because initials can be, people are smart, especially on computers nowadays. They can figure out who it is just by initials. I think you should just use a number code or something, and then it should be the victim can't give that code to anybody else. Because suppose the juvenile is accused of a crime. Then he's found not guilty or the charges are not taken up or whatever. Then that juvenile is released. Well, now the victim is feeling like they're feeling some kind of way because they think the juvenile is guilty. So then they take it upon themselves to go after the juvenile because they got the information from the database about who that was, how they was released, and other information like that. So I know I seem like I'm rambling. I'm nervous about speaking in front of the committee, but as a black mother, as a victim of juvenile crime, I don't like this idea of juvenile information being made public in any kind of way, even to victims.
Hi, I'm Debbie Hudnall, the Executive Director of the Louisiana Clerks Association. The clerks of court are the custodians of the records, and we do have issues with doing a data dump to the Attorney General's office when the clerks can put those records online for those parishes that they're talking about.
So the bill right now requires the information to go to the Attorney General and not directly to the public, and it's going through the Attorney General?
Yes, sir, that is what the bill is requiring. And there was testimony about the victim's notification when there's already law in place about victims' notification.
That's why I was asking.
And in fact, in 2017, Act 258 was passed that says the Department of Public Safety, let me get to the, I'm sorry, to the extent that funding is available for such purposes, the Louisiana Commission on Law Enforcement and Administration of Criminal Justice shall develop and provide by August 1st, 2018, a system by which an agency may choose to complete and submit the Uniform Victims Notice Registration Form electronically, and by which a victim may choose to receive all notices electronically. So that was passed in 2018, so that the funding would be, if the funding.
And is that implemented right now? Is it in effect?
I don't know that it has been completely placed into effect, but our point is there's statute already providing for that, but I think there is some type of electronic notification.
Well, that's only on with regards to the victims, right? That's not the public.
That's correct.
All right.
I don't know how we think we can do things better or differently if we don't know what's happening. We can't make decisions about policy. We can't make decisions about programs, services, and funding without knowing what's going on. That's what this information will provide us. With regard to juvenile, we don't even know when we go in a voting booth. And again, I'm not saying that most of the judges aren't doing it right. But when we go elect a juvenile court judge, we have no idea what they're doing, and we likely don't know who those judges are. Why? Because of the confidentiality, the secrecy that revolves around juvenile crime and juvenile records. Now, I have committed to Representative Bryan, and I have committed to Representative Knox and Representative LaFleur, who have asked me to continue the discussions regarding confidentiality of juveniles. I don't know if it can be accomplished, and maybe it can, and I don't know how it's going to impact what we're attempting to achieve to do, but I'm going to work with them. I'm committed to continuing those discussions. This bill has a long way to go if it passes out of this committee, so we have time for those discussions. But it's time that we look at things differently and try to make an impact on the crime, the war zone that we have out there, and make solid decisions, outcome-based decisions on crime. And I ask for your favorable passage.
Thank you. Is it, Representative Garofalo, did you make the motion, or did I cut you off before you made a motion? Representative Garofalo is moving to report House Bill 321 as amended. Is there any opposition to reporting 321 as amended? Well, I object, so roll call vote.
Of course you do.
Sorry? Yeah, we have a roll call vote.
Representative Bakla? Yes. Yes. Representative Bryant? Yes. Yes. Representative Edmonston? Yes. Yes. Representative Fontenot?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Garofalo?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Gudo?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Hodges?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Horton?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Knox? Yes. Representative LaFleur?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Marcel?
No.
No. Representative Muscarello?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Seabaugh?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Villio?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Marino?
No.
No. 13 yeas, 2 nays.
Thank you.
Thank you, members.